Hi guys, today is a splendid day on the coast. Blue skies, really good views. So I'm going to go up Mt Haast, and this week I've done a few calvings. So I've got a video of one of the calvings. We joined the action just after I have epiduraled her. So she stopped pushing on her, and you can tell she's epidural by how floppy her tail is. And yeah, give that a squiz.
So, as I said, she's just been epiduraled, and we'll just quickly speed through me getting my PPE stuff on. Always want to stay as clean and hopefully as dry as possible. There's a surprising amount of goo inside every cow. So, I epidural with 4.5 mils of local, so lidocaine, with half a mil of oxalizine. And this is me just getting my equipment ready. Over here, I use pulleys. Back in the UK, I used calving jacks a lot more. The pulleys, I think, offer you a lot more dynamic ability to calve a cow. A jack is great if there's just one of you. So if it's up to you to get the calf out on your own, it's really can be operated by just one person. Its limitation is really when the cow goes down or she starts swinging around. It really takes out your shins, and it's not great for calving down cows. I found you'd never get a great angle on them, but as long as you've got somewhere to anchor a pulley, I find that they're a lot more dynamic. You can put on and ease off pressure a lot more easily. The main issue is just finding a place to actually anchor them, and if a cow does go down, repositioning that and sorting that out. Here we go, lubing up, and you can't have too much lube. Yeah, so I always epidural before I put my hand in. That gives time for the epidural to actually take effect. You want to leave it about 10 minutes or so before you actually start filling the output to get the most out of the epidural. So putting my hand in and having a bit of a rummage, I'm just finding out what the calf is actually presenting as and why there is an issue. In this case, it is posterior presentation, which is as this picture shows. A lot of guys do confuse it with a breech, but a true breech is really just tail first, whereas this is the back legs coming first, and it's just basically the calf being born in exactly the opposite way as it should be. Normally you want them to come out in the Superman position with the two front legs and the head. So here I'm just attaching with chains, and what I do is I always try and double loop 2 loops around each leg. That way it really stops the pressure building up on just one joint. You can sort of do it on your own arm, and it is surprising how much difference just a single loop and a double loop actually does make. So it is certainly well worth doing. So again, you can't have too much lube. We'll put a few fistfuls of lube into her vagina, just making sure everything comes out pretty easily, pretty slippery. And now to hook up our pulley system. So I've secured it round one of the metal fence posts, and the other end we just hook onto the chains which I've attached to the legs. And we've obviously got a leak in their in-house feeding system for the cows. So as I'm applying pressure, I'm just making sure everything's coming through as well. The main thing is really just a tail head. Sometimes you can get the tail head pointing straight up in the air, and that catches on the pelvis, and if you don't sort it out, you can break the tail. But as long as the tail is nicely pointing down between the hind legs, everything sort of comes out at a nice angle, so to speak. She's a nice big girl and she's nice and open. As you can see, there's a fair bit of goo coming out as well. They've caught her pretty early on. I think they found her in the paddock with her tail up in the air and not really doing very much. So that's why they drafted her out and gave us a buzz. So a big issue with posterior, so the backwards calving, is that the hips do come through nicely, and there are certain ways you can get around this. Is slightly different angle that you would normally pull for a forward calf, and you can also try and rotate the calf slightly to get the hips out in a 90-degree angle than you would expect. It just means there's a lot more room in the cow's hips to actually fit the calf's hips through. Now what I'm doing here is I'm applying some J-lube. I'm a big fan of J-lube, which is just solid powder lube, and it mixes with the cow's own juices and the calf's own fluid to actually become very, very slippery. And the nice thing about having it as a powder, you can introduce it in your hand and you can actually rub it on the points which you actually want to lube up the most. So in this instance, I sort of rub it on the calf's tail head, on around its hips, and also around the inside of the cow's pelvis. And now everything is nicely lined up, everything's looking good, and it's just a case of getting this calf out of her. So once her hips come, everything else comes pretty quickly. And I sort of run out of room with a pulley, so I give up on the pulley and I try a bit of manual tugging. Not the most daintiest of births in the world. I go in for the catch, but I've given it a fair bit of lube, so it's rather more of a controlled descent rather than a purposeful catch. And yeah, it's a nice live calf at the end of the day. So now I'm just checking. I always check in case there's a twin or if there's a tear in there. You really look like a bit of an idiot when you do calve a cow, let her go, and then the farmer phones you back and says, oh, there's another calf in there which can't get out. Fortunately, it's never happened to me yet, but yeah, I have heard the stories. It has happened to some other vets, so always double check for twins. Now we're giving her a few drugs. So the first drug I give her is Oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone which clamps down the uterus. So that stops her prolapsing. Because we've had a bit of a pull to get it out, because I've been fidgeting there, she is at a slightly higher chance of prolapsing. So that Oxytocin just prevents that. She's also getting a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory and painkiller. So that should last 3 days in her system, and that just brings down any swelling, and it's a bit of pain relief for her. And she is also having a course of antibiotics, just because her calf came out covered in a little bit of feces, so she's pretty dirty in there with her calf's contamination. So we're just covering her for that, just to stop her getting endometritis or metritis at a later date. The Oxytocin and the non-steroidal I put at IV, and I always go IV in the tailhead for small volumes, which both of these are reasonably small volumes. It's a nice easy vein to get once you've had a bit of practice, and because the tail is epiduraled, she doesn't feel it, so there's no flinching, no movement, and yeah, it's a nice easy port of call to actually get a vein on her. And the antibiotic goes into the muscle as well. So that's a J-lube. If you are interested in doing a fair bit of calving, or you do calvings, or you're a dairy farmer or a vet, I would highly recommend the powdered lube. It's much easier to carry than the liquid gel sort of lube, which you saw me put in by a handful before. It is reasonably expensive, but in small quantities. I mean, every calving I only use like a teaspoonful, and you can really put the lubrication where you need it, place it on the calf, and yeah, it makes the job so much easier. And if you do run out of liquid lube, you can make the lube up itself. So get a couple of litres of fluid or a couple of litres of water and mix in a tablespoon amount of J-lube, and that gives some pretty good lube for you then to use. as where needed. And like all the jobs, it's a big wash down job. Big thing with our job is biosecurity. You might have seen that I use carving chains rather than carving ropes. One of the reasons for the carving chains is because they're so much easier to disinfect after visits. So I can do one job, disinfect them, get rid of all the goo, get them nice and clean, no more bugs on them, and then straight on to the next carving. Whereas with the ropes, they're a lot more easier to manhandle inside the cow and place on the calf and whatnot. But I do find that they are harder to clean and disinfect between visits. Almost same with a pulley as well. A pulley is harder to clean than a carving jack, but it is a lot more easy to actually keep a pulley in your car than actually finding room for a jack, which is pretty bulky really. And particularly with New Zealand and its mycoplasma bovis outbreak, it's even more important now that we do take extra care of biosecurity and washing down stuff properly. And that's a nifty little trick to get all the water out of your rope. Find a nice secure spot and twist it up. And happy mum, happy calf.
So a little bit of background, Mt Haast is just the other side of Reefton. So I think it took me about just over an hour to get here. And I think it's around 1500 meters high, but I'll fact check for you. But one of the interesting things about it is the actual distance as a bird flies to the top is only about 3 or 4 k's. So it's a very short distance, but a pretty steep climb. So it's been pretty gnarly so far, and I think it's going to get a wee bit more challenging as a gradient increases. And we're just currently at the bush line now, so the bush is ending, and we're going to ascend onto the alpine section. Just looking back down the valley, you can see some of the mountains behind me, but Mt Haast is just up there. So yeah, onwards and upwards. We've made it to the summit. The wind chill is absolutely freezing. There's still a fair bit of snow up here because it's only just spring. But yeah, the views are pretty bloody cool. No, it's a very cool part of the world, this. Well, thank you very much for watching this episode, and yeah, hope you're safe and hope you're happy. Catch you next time.